All right, we are on the air. Left Project once again. I made it back for the next reading. My name is Amuni Israel. This is Solonomics 101, the Left Project. I have an announcement to make. We are on our 90th episode. Our 90th episode of the Lev Project, bringing us into the month of August. This is what, August the 8th. And we started on January the 1st. So since January the 1st to August the 8th, we have done 90. Well, at the end of today, we have done 90 episodes of the Lev Project. So if you didn't learn something from this, I know I learned a whole lot. So definitely, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And without further ado, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and try to catch us up here so that we can get into another narrative. But for now, we're still in this one. What's happening in this narrative is it's the story of a slave master. And he was not only a slave master, but he also had other endeavors that he practiced, which is, he had stocks in different companies. He went in, he was a landlord, a farmer, he sold his timber off his things. So he did a number of things. And so at this point, I'm going to continue because we were a little bit behind. We've been lagging or a little bit on John Blackford. It's not written as a thriller. So definitely it takes some stamina to move through it. Hold on one second. But this is what we're supposed to build up. We're supposed to build up our stamina and our ability to just go beyond things that tantalize the senses, going to spaces that someone may think is boring. But for the purposes of edification, all of these things, as people like, where's the money? And I say it all the time, they're like, where's the money? Where did all the money go? But now we're reading a log of, basically, transactions, and it's not that interesting to most. But it's all good. Again, we're learning discipline here and learning not to be so, as they say in the Caribbean, hypey all the time. So let me just go ahead and close this out and let me start. Once again, welcome to the Lev Project, episode 90, 10 more episodes until we have made it to episode 100. Of course, we're not going to stop at 100. We're going to go all the way through the end of the year, most high willing, and learn so much more. Because for those who complain about Black History Month being a day or a week or a month, and we complain every time February comes around, we're actually at the Lev Project doing something about it day by day. So the 21st, Wednesday, we're back at his journal here. And it goes on to say, weather morning, some clouds and very smoky but moderate. Hands sowing Timothy seed have sown a bushel on the hill in front of the house. Will and Murph went out to the clearing after breakfast. Edward Morrison called, paid him on account of wood cutting, $6.50. Mr. Renner brought a 50-cent note and exchanged Enoch part of the day in the boat. Went to town, brother brought my paper back. Sorry. Again, some of his things are misspelling. Went to town, brought my paper, bought a ball, candle wick, cotton, paid 25 cents. Miss Naif sewing. Daff came out after her miscarriage. And again, we read in yesterday's portion, he was insinuating that Daff, she had twins, and that he's insinuating that she may have done something to cause this miscarriage. She came out after her miscarriage. Franklin and Ashburn gone to Verger to shoot pigeons. The river continued to rise all day. Nothing done with the boat, no return. Will and Martin sawing shingle timber, all hands cutting and splitting wood. Ned has made no return as nothing done. 22nd, Thursday, weather smoky. I don't know how the weather gets smoky, but I guess he means foggy. And moderate river very full, not passable with ferry boat. Will, Murph, and Enoch gone out to clearing, to sawing and burning brush. Mr. Morrison called to return a $5 note, which I paid his son, who misstated the transaction by saying I had only paid him $5 when I paid him $6.50. I rode out to the new ground and down to JK's. He has exchanged his horse for a gray mare. He gave $10 to Isaac Widows, called, wants money. Lent my wagon to Myers, who is moving to the farm. SM hit, sold to Emmert. left his wagon at the river, not being able to cross. Ned reports Israel 8 days, helping some days, but little done. Ned returned this day $11 and 12 and 1/2 cents for the receipts of the last 2 days from him, Jupe, and Israel. And they're the ones who usually attending his business here in the boat. It says 23rd Friday, weather morning, foggy, damp. Murph tried the roller on the hillside. It's too wet. Quite after going a few rounds, found the horse's feet wet, went too deep. He then went to the clearing where Will and Enoch is. Franklin called once hands to go in the ferry boat to bring his horses from the other side of the river, very little lowered. I copied B. Herbert's letter to Henry and sealed this. I rode out to the clearing and to J.K. He has cut his hand badly. Frank and his wife gone to Schatzberger. He brought my torchlight. I wrote a little to John Colburn. Widows called wants money. William Morrison is not cutting. The Negroes, John Thomas and George Snavely, sawing off logs. Negro Will has nearly finished his wood cutting. He engaged to maul the rail, or I guess haul the rail cuts left by Philip Fleming and Co., and to cut out the balance of Isaac Widow's lot. Ned and Jupe and Israel Fry in the boat made one trip with the boat, one or two with the skiff. And he says Daphne has been hospitalized for 11 days, is what they're saying as it relates to her miscarriage. And if you notice, as a business person, you see that there's money going out for paying people for their services when he does pay, and then money coming in. And, hopefully in business, you make a profit. And that's what's going to make business worthwhile. Sometimes as we returning back to business as, quote, those who were often taken advantage of, we think it's a crime to make money. We see somebody's enterprise or what it is they're doing, and because we're so far removed from business, we're like, oh, and that person is making money. It's not a crime to make money. It's not a crime to make money. That's why you're in business. It's not a non-for-profit. So if you're in business and you're not making money, that's a problem. You understand what I'm saying? And I notice the verbiage oftentimes with our people. I actually just heard it yesterday, the day before yesterday. The main objection is someone is now, if you're a thief, that's one thing. If you're robbing people, that's another. If you're a charlatan and you selling snakes oils, that's something else. But if you're an honest business person, making money and providing a service is the objective of business. And so we have to take a look at, this was a businessman, and this is his personal log. He didn't intend for us to be reading it. But what we're reading, for me, he's really kind of dry, like crackers without butter. Like, he's really dry, but he's giving the facts. He's talking about money coming in and money going out, and things moving from point A to point B, settling debts, clearing bills and satisfying customers, or doing some kind of, like he said, there was a little dispute, the son came, gave the wrong amount. So all of this is what is business, and we have to stop with this mentality that if you pay somebody something, they're robbing you. They're not robbing you. If they're providing a service or a product, then you pay them. So this is, again, we have been psychologically injured in this space, because we have been programmed to be like, oh my goodness, this person is making money. That's what they're supposed to be doing. Entrepreneurship is in us. We were merchants and traders. So if you're not making money, it's different when you're a straight employee. They set what it is that you're supposed to make, and then that's it. But if you are the one who's making it, there's no set to what you make. And so anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. Let me continue. But let me make sure here that for those who have just joined us, I wanted to say, hold on. I don't know where I put the thing. I wanted to say that this is our 90th episode. So praise be to the Most High. We're on episode 90, 10 more episodes to 100. We've been doing good since the beginning of the year, even though we slacked up a little bit. I'm saying we, really me, because so much stuff has been going on. I had to take some time out and stuff like that, just to steady my head, especially with the high level and the very emotionally jolting. I'm kind of glad we're reading John Blackford right now, because with all that's going on in the news, And then to read more trauma, I think that would kind of be overload. So I don't want to be overloaded, and we have to guard our mind, protect our spirit. You know, we want to learn. Hold on. You see, take a deep breath. Hold on. Deeper. Hold on. Slip down. Woo, episode, yeah, we're going hard. Yeah, Kyle, welcome. This episode, yeah, episode 90. So this we've been doing it from January 1. So no complaining about Black History only being the shortest. In the we couldn't even, and we are not even touching. We just touching the corner of a part in history. And why I'm interested in it, Brother Kyle, is because this is where the injury. Because I could talk about, and again, it will be very controversial to some, but we could talk about everything that predated, and we should. But the collective injury happened at this point. And as somebody who's always interested in soul healing and healing the body and the mind in the process, I think this is a part where collectively, no matter what part with on the continent you came from, what different culture you came from, all of the quote melanated people of the diaspora experience this collective injury, and this is what we share in common. And so this is why I think it's very, very needed to look at this. So yes, we're on episode 90. At the end of today, we'd have done our 90th episode of the Lev Project. So much to go through. Let's continue. Saturday, like we said before, no one gets a rest at his location. The 24th, Saturday, weather cloudy and smoky. The wind sprang up about 10 o'clock. Nicholas came this morning, commenced spading in the garden. Will, Murphy, and Enoch going to do the clearing. The river falling very slow. Sent the letter written by Bushrod Herbert to the post office, and one I wrote to him, John Colburn, Washington City, stating I could not attend to have any stone quarry for him. And again, the river is, you know, it was ice, it was winter, there was a lot of water, so now it's melting and the river is teeming. And because he has a boat business, he's always concerned about what's going on with the river, because it means that he's not making what he think he should be making on that investment. Isaac Widows called again for money and says it's worth $25 to build the wall of the cedar to the house in S-Town. Shellman called drunk again, has been to Shepherdstown. Colonel Miller sent his man Nelson with an order. I sent him 1 bushel of clover seed. Franklin rode that the bay coat, sent Murph to help with the ferry boat. They did not go with the boat for Corbin, who wanted to cross over. He returned home. I rode out. Negro Will Grove has cut, he says, 18½ cord of wood and hauled 550 rails. Ned and Jupe and Israel Fry attended to the boat. And once again, in the beginning, and I keep saying this for those who may have not heard the beginning episodes, because we're on like part 6 of this. It's kind of a long narrative, but in the beginning, they said that he employed quote free Negroes. The town had over 1,000 plus free Negroes, as they said. It had Indians, it had German men and Irishmen, and so he would employ all of these people. So usually when you hear him say Negro Will, he's referring to somebody who was not his slave and he's actually paying for their work and their labor. It says 25th, Sunday, weather, morning, clear, calm, and pleasant. The river has risen during the night, continues stationary during the day. Helena and William walked down to JK. His wife came up in the afternoon with Helena. I walked down through the fields sown with wheat, which does not look so promising as I expected it, even uneven and much cocoa. One of the lambs has lost both its hind legs. JK came and him and his wife supped with us, gave Joe some 2 new strong muslin shirts. River falling a little this evening, nothing done at the ferry, no return, always looking for money from that ferry. Will sulking about all day, and Will, I believe, is one of his, Will may be an indentured person. He says he's sulking, okay. The family has been quiet, nothing worth note has occurred. 26, Monday. And I said yesterday, for me, just reading these journal entries as someone who always started a journal and then started and stopped, just to see the stick-to-itiveness and the determination to at least account for what has happened in that day, even if it's a few sentences, it's kind of inspiration, especially as it relates to goals that you may set for yourself. So if anything, we should take something from this conversation. Monday, 26, weather clear and pleasant. Had Enoch to plant some small locusts in the pit and 1 apple tree. William Murph in the clearing. The river is falling. George Reynolds and his son crossing from the other side, going up to Hancock. Nicholas working in the garden. I have trimmed several peach trees. Had Enoch engaged all day taking up sprouts. Honorable Jacob F. Grove called, spent a short time. The ferry boat has made several trips in the course of the day. Ned, Jupe, and Israel Fry in the boat, done but a poor business. Israel Fry, it used to just be Ned and Jupe. Israel Fry is trying something. He ended up in the boat too. And so this is why now Ned, Jupe, and Israel Fry is in the boat. The 27th, Tuesday, weather fine and pleasant. I rode in the gig with Mrs. B, which is his wife, to Sharpsburg, spent the day and dined at Colorado, Colonel Miller. I rode to the mill. Bryza says on Saturday I can have the 8 bib or BBLS, I guess that's a measurement of flour for bread. Bought articles in the store amounted to $2.62 and one half and returned home. I mean, in this day and age, you wouldn't be buying anything in the store unless you went to the dollar store for some or the corner store for some $2.62. But if we are wondering what cocoa was, it says it's an annual weed that tends to choke out wheat and or grain. This is why he was like, it wasn't that promising. And Jacob Grove, a Democratic member of the Maryland legislature, is in 1843, he headed a legislative committee that investigated and reported on fraudulent and illegal action of the Farmers and Millers Bank of Haggerston, which resulted in the revocation of the banker's charter. The bank had been the one which Blackford did business. So he made mention that he went to, again, this is a real person. This is not fictitious. We have been reading since the beginning of the year, all firsthand accounts. All of the accounts are firsthand as it relates to, so this is his own words. And what is something else I wanted to say? It skipped my mind. It'll come back. Let me continue. We're on page 32 if you would like to read along. Right now we're reading again from the journal, the business journal of slave master John Blackford. And he was not only just a slave master, he was entrepreneurial in general. Saul Hoffman, the hog's peor, who is to come on the 5th of April to spray my pigs. Franklin had the wagon and team to haul 2 loads of wood. William Murph working in the new ground. Enoch took to the mill corn and buckwheat. So you can see it doesn't look like he had a lot of slaves either, because William Murph just stayed working. Ned and Jupe stay working. So and he doesn't name a lot of slaves. I have to go back and remember how many he had on his plantation. It says Helena went to Shepherdstown, spent some short time and returned. Colonel Miller, son of David, is in bed sick, as is likewise the little daughter Anne. Mr. Mackey is complaining, takes of setting out to the west in the course of a week or 10 days. Nicholas in the garden, which is the 3rd day. Ned and Jupe and Israel Fry in the boat, which is 12 days for Israel in the boat. This day has been pretty good business. The river is full. The 28th of Wednesday, weather morning, cool, damp, and cloudy. Again, like I said before, he's like a weatherman. He's like a whole lot of stuff rolled in one. But we'll continue. Hannah, Will's wife, delivered of a female child about 12 o'clock last night, so reports Mrs. Fry, who delivered her. Now, just keep in mind, this is a masculine energy who's writing this, a man. And not to say that, but he's just stereotypical in the sense that he's not going into any details. He's just giving. So sometimes women and men, we miss each other, we argue. And if you could look, you're actually looking into the mind of a man right now. And he's not, there's no sentiments, there's no emotions. And for me, it's just interesting to see how he sees his world, or, and how he's recording it. Nicholas came to work in the garden, and Martin went to the barn to make straw faggots, whatever straw faggots is, for the ice house. Ruth Myers, the man who borrowed my wagon, crossed over Harper's Ferry Bridge and returned this way. Let him the wagon for another trip. Miss Berry and Miss Jude called, spent the afternoon, and supped with us. Once again, they had no telephones. Call mean they came to their house. Martin Shellman patched the roof of the ice house, and an old German woman and a man she called her son, called begging, gave them 12 and one half, and a young man with books to sell called. Murph and Will in the new ground at work. Enoch took buckwheat to the mill and brought a bag of cornmeal home, then hauled a few carts, loads manure in the garden. Ned, Jupe, and Israel Fry in the boat. Small business. Back to small business. The business is right there is very unsteady. The 29th, Thursday. Weather clear and pleasant with some wind. My throat is some better. I don't even remember him saying he was sick. John Smith, the saddler, called. I paid the balance of his account, $24.67 and one half, and took his receipt on the account. Franklin called, lent him my mare to ride to Palmer's cell. Enoch took the mill 7 bushels of rye and 8 bushels of oats to have chopped. Everybody was doing their own chopping. You knew what was in your food. You grew your food. You cut your food. You grinded your corn. You grinded your wheat. Very basic lifestyle, but one that assured you of what was actually going into your food. It's not like now, and everybody's now trying to get back to this point. It's funny, every life is reciprocal. Life is a circle. You always come back to this point at some time. It says here, Nicholas is working in the garden planting potatoes, have taken some from the holes. Miss Fry called, settled, and paid her for Israel's working in the boat 15 days and his cutting wood and her own service as midwife, amounting to $12.87 and a half. William Murph is in the new ground. A letter from Henry to Helena received my Patriot of 26 and 27. That's his newspaper that he's always looking for. The river has fallen off considerably. A very considerable breach in the canal. The viaduct, I don't know what that is, below the ironworks has given way and fell in. Ned and Jupe and Israel Fry and Enoch part of the day in the boat. Small business. So they got 4 people in the boat now. It says here, if you have any questions, feel free to ask on the side here. I'm going to continue. It says 30th Friday, weather partly cloudy, was frost. Last night, Murph and Will cutting out in the new ground. Nicholas working in the garden. Fran rode up. This is some crazy stuff here. Fotis pony, and they rode him to Sharpsburg Martin. And it says here, Hannah and Will were slaves. So where do we read about Hannah? Did we read about Hannah? They're letting us know Hannah and Will are slaves, but maybe I'm bugging out. Hold on one second. Let me backtrack and see what was going on with Hannah here. Franklin, potatoes. I don't remember reading about Hannah. Maybe I'm bugging out. The old German lady called asking for stuff. Helena. Maybe I'm bugging out because I don't remember seeing Hannah. But nonetheless, they're giving us a head up. Oh, all right. Weather morning cold, damp, and cloudy. Hannah, Will's wife, delivered of a female child about 12 o'clock last night. All right, cool. So he's reporting the increase in his stock. You notice he reports when the cows have a baby, because now he just increased his stock. Now he reports when a enslaved person has a baby, because that's the same concept. They increase his stock. So 31st, Saturday, weather morning cloudy and threatens to rain. I had rather a bad night's rest with sore throat. Took a dose of Sidolits, I don't know what that is, before breakfast. Mr. Elgin and Rogers called, dissuaded them from taking Rogers' disposition, gave Rogers my account against the company, amount $24.29. Elgin and Franklin gone on to Hagerstown in the gig. Negro Will call, paid him $12.25 for cutting wood. So they said Will was a slave. So how? Okay, and he paid him. Unless he's paying them. Sometimes their masters, as we learn, it's like their masters would rent them out. And so whatever money they would earn, they would have to turn around and give it to the master. And maybe sometimes, depending, take a small portion. Mauling rails, Murph has gone with Mrs. Fry, goods in the wagon. We saw that in, what was the name of that narrative? If anybody remembers the narrative we read, oh man, it escapes me right now, but he bought his freedom. He bought his freedom. Now, I'm on intermission, I'm going to get the name of the narrative. I got so many of them rolling around in my head. But he saved up his money in that way by hiring himself out and bought his freedom. I'm going to tell you in a minute, because now that's going to bother me to know what the name of that narrative was. It says for cutting wood and mauling, so he paid Will $12.25. Josiah Smith and Jeanette sat out for home at 1:30 after 2 o'clock. Miss Perry called, dined with us, set a note by her to M.J. Brown. Corbin passed on with his stud horse to Sharpsburg. Miss Henry's Jute and Hunter called. Corbin called, returning, did not leave his horse in Sharpsburg. Elizabeth spent the afternoon and dined with us. Corbin reports Murphy drunk in Sharpsburg, sent Will after him, and he came home, brought 8 bibbles of flour and 113 two weights or four. 1 bbl of flour store and 4 flour loss considerable. Negro George called. Miss Fry's son-in-law called, promised to move him on Tuesday, is to pay $3.50. Once again, Ned, Jupe, and Enoch in the boat, a good business. You know, he's real specific with the time. I'm wondering in 18, what, 38, and now we're up to April. We're on page 34. What is he using to mark the time? You know, sometimes we, you know, definitely is not a digital clock. What was the clock? What was the methodology of telling the time? And what was he using to note the weather? You know, some of it was pretty on the surface, but some of it he would be like really specific, telling you where the wind was blowing from. Like, did he have a weather vane? You know, all of these little things for us to kind of get an understanding of how things developed into this space and time. Sometimes we think people who came before us was slow and, you know, they didn't know as much and we were so much more technologically advanced. But whatever he's doing, he's not turning on Fox News or, you know, the Weather Channel to find out what the weather is. This is just a regular businessman and slave owner, and he's over here playing meteorologist. So just very interesting things to know. If we went outside, would we know what direction the wind was blowing from? You know, would we? Because again, you need all this stuff for things like planting and things of that nature. So would we know these type of things is the question. All right, the narrative and adventure of Venture Smith, I think it is. You know, y'all know I had to go look. Playlist. Yeah, no, I think it's Venture Smith. I think it's Venture Smith because Venture Smith was captured. And if you didn't see that, we have, if you're on my YouTube page, if you go to playlist, if you missed any of them, because if you go to Left Project, all of them are just put in one place. But if you want to go space by space, like 50 years and change, let me just take this time to do a little bit of review, being that we're up to 90 episodes. After today, we would have completed our 90th episode. So just for review, for those who may just be linking on to the Left Project and not sure of the work we've done, within those episodes is 50 Years in Chains, slave narrative by Charles Ball. And that one was 16 episodes long. And then I also did an underground review because the underground came on earlier this year. One of our first narratives was Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. That was a longer book. Again, that one is also available online for free, the actual text, as well as if you want to listen to it with my commentary, you can look at that. An account of the slave trade. As a matter of fact, let me just share my screen so you can kind of see what I'm seeing as I take you through the tour here. For those who may not know, let me be a nice guest here, guest host. For those who may not know, here we are. So this is my YouTube channel. If you press on playlist, when you come, you're going to be here at Amuna Yisrael. Okay, it's taking long, right? But if you want to go to the playlist so that you can see some of the narratives that we have done before, we're doing, and we're not only just doing from the enslaved individual, we're doing from both locations, from the enslaved, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. From the enslaved individual as well as the enslaver. So right now, if you just join us, you're coming in on the actual enslaver portion of the conversation. Here we go. Hold up. All right. So we have the narrative. I got to make sure that all of them in the box. But we read the narrative of Henry Box Brown, which by far is one of my favorite, because the way he wrote is just so inspiring. Even in this day and time, his writing style was all the way, you know. So narrative of Henry Box Brown, I got to make sure all of those are in there. We did some series. We read 30 Years of Change from Bondage to Freedom by Lewis Hughes. And we had Lewis Hughes, through his research, he found out that he was a great grandson of Lewis Hughes, many times removed. And so we had J.C. Hughes on. He tells his story. And we actually did 2 episodes of Discovering Your Roots in this series. And then I read out of Growing Up in Slavery. And so that was during Childhood Abuse Awareness Month. And then I read some female narratives out of, what's the name of the book? My mind. I read some female narratives out of Weevils in the Wheat. Sorry, so many. So, The Light and the Truth of Aaron, Slavery. That was kind of a wild read as well, kind of like this one, a little bit unorthodox. The narrative and adventure of Venture Smith, I think he's the one who bought himself out of slavery by renting himself out. An account of slave trade of the coast of Africa. This is a European who made this account. Very interesting video. Incidents in the life of a slave girl. Again, like I said, Harriet Jacobs. That's a full-length novel or book. 50 Years in Chains, slave narrative by Charles Ball. This was another good one. These were some of the videos that we did before. And again, the Underground series. And I have to, it says 83 here. I just have to put all of the rest of the videos in there. And again, if you want to have any slave research, this is documentaries that I find along the way that I find useful. And so I put them all here if you would like to, go through those documentaries. So there you have it. If you go to playlists, I have arranged it for you. And I will go back over to make sure I didn't leave any specifics out. So with that said, let's get back to reading. Let's get back to reading here a little bit more. We're going to go to all the way to the end of the year. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. All right. Okay. John Blackford, April 1838. We're all the way in April now. So we know it's getting to be better weather for planting. It says, first Sunday, weather calm and moderate. The river has come down. The canal has been out of use the last 2 weeks in consequence of breaches. My throat continues sore. I took last night going to bed 3 Brandureth pills, which operated fine this morning. Sickened me some little. Had the cramp violently through the night. Took 3 more. So he looked like he started getting doped up on some stuff. I don't know what no Brandon pills is, but oh. It says 3 more this morning, which operates this afternoon. Became cloudy, arose in the west. Thundered all along from the west to the northeast, came on to rain about 12 o'clock and continued 2 hours moderately. CK and Helena went over to church. It is reported that the breach in the canal, which had been repaired, gave away last night. Franklin and Elgin returned last night from Hagerstown and have sat out again this afternoon for that place. A large flock of stock sheep crossed the ferry to Virginia. Negro Jim Clausen called in full of news. Ned, Jupe, and he ain't even saying what the news is. I mean, like, come on, dude. Ned and Jupe and Enoch in the boat done a good business, crossed 320 sheep. So he's really excited about this. Second Monday of April, weather clear, pleasant. William Murph gone to the clearing. Doc Quigley called directly after breakfast, gave him a check on the Hagerstown Bank for $348.50. That's not a small amount in 1838. Being in full for Mrs. Swearingen's 1/2 of the receipts of the ferry for the last year. Received a letter by mail from John Colburn, Washington, on the subject of quarry and stone. A man called, whose name is Solomon Boyer, lives in Sharpstown, wants singles to make. Says he lives with Mrs. Smith. The weather has changed cooler this afternoon. Mr. Bemis took little daughters came over, 2 little daughters came over and spent the night. The wind being too high for them to cross the river. I took 4 pills in the morning, see, which operated partially considerable bile. My throat is still sore and I'm not well. Ned and Jupe and Enoch in the boat have done considerable good business. Understand Elizabeth is not well, has fever. So it says here, Maryland and Virginia were important sheep growing states. In addition to this herd of 320, Blackford's Ferry on another occasion carried over a herd of 500 sheep. Blackford himself raised sheep and at his death left about 100, including both Saxon and Merino breeds. And 2, Mrs. Swearingen collected through Dr. Quigley, her agent, 1/2 of the take of Ferry after all expenses were paid for her 1/2 interest in the ferry. Hence, the net earnings of the ferry for 1837 was $696. Blackford bought Mrs. Swingenhern's interest in 1838. So this was one of his joint ventures here. Third Tuesday. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Right now, for those who have just joined us, we're reading John Blackford. This, again, pretty cut and dry but again, use your imagination to understand that he's just giving you the bare minimum, and that this is the day in the life, or the days in the life of a slave owner. This particular slave owner, he wasn't just because he was very ambitious. He didn't just stay around on the farm and beat up people. He went into different spaces, and so this is why his narrative reads a little differently. Fourth Wednesday, weather calm but cool. White frost last night. My health is still bad. Took this morning six. He's ODing on these pills, Brandrift pills, which is 20 I have taken within the last 4 hours. Like, what is he trying to? Maybe it's the bacon he's eating, possibly. But anywho, Will and Murph hauling off the gum from the new ground. Enoch hauled 3 loads, chips and wood with ox cart. Helena has spent part of this day in Sharpstown. Franklin went over. He reports Welsh's family to have gone off after nearly destroying the house. Mrs. Perry is about to enter the breach in the canal mended, filling the level this afternoon. Nicholas called and got a bushel of corn. Says he has been splitting the poplar tree that Will assisted him to saw. And I said yesterday, all of this tree cutting, I'm wondering if they were actually planting back trees as much as they were deforesting the whole, eastern seaboard. But anyway, I understand that Colo Miller sat out for Balto, Ned and Jupe in the boat, have done a tolerable business. My throat, it's funny because he usually ends with Ned and Jupe in the boat, but now he's having a little bit of health issues. So he ends with, my throat grows worse in the evening. The pills have operated well, much bile. I'm wondering where he's getting all this production of bile from. Or let's continue. Fifth Thursday, weather, clear, morning, cool. Will, Murph, and Enoch out in new ground. Miss Eleanora Miller and Ann Hayes came. Miss Eaton and her little grandson, Robert Quigley, came. My throat is still sore. I have taken 6 more Brandurf pills. Now I'm going to have to find out what Brandurf pills is, because he's ODing on these things. Miss Henry Hunter and Mrs. Webb called, spent a short time, and returned. James Shepard sent a note by his son requesting $30, which I sent him. You notice some people will ask for money, I guess what they owe, and he sends nothing. And then some people he pays them promptly. So I don't know what that is about. Miss Sarah Morgan, Miss Kenry, and Mrs. Baylord called and spent the evening. Miss Morgan presented a subscription paper to raise money for Mr. Hargrave. I did not subscribe. Hoffman called. He spied 10 sow pigs and cut several, paid him 62 1/2. Franklin assisted him, directed him to call at JK's Mrs. Eaton. And little Bob remained all night. Ned and Jupe in the boat. Tolerable bus or business. Received a letter from Henry dated the 4th. And Henry is his son, who's supposed to be in either boarding school or whatever the case may be. Another thing, because of a level of not having letters and books with a correspondence, you notice that the social intercourse that was happening, a lot of people are coming through. And I said this a couple of episodes ago. So we could imagine they're not just coming to just, sip their tea and eat crumpets. They're coming, they're having conversations, they're passing back and forth thoughts, processes. This is the road of the day. So many people are coming through. This is the telephone. This is the internet. You know what I'm saying? This is the Facebook. Oh, what happened? I didn't know that. So he's like a center. He's like a news station, because he would have had, and he's not dropping any of it. If it doesn't, I bet if one of the women would have wrote, you would have heard all of the business. Because I'm reading a woman's journal, and her journal reads totally different from his journal. What's her name again? Elizabeth somebody. The journal the Plantation Journal of, what's the name of it? The Journal of a Plantation something. I can't remember right now. But her journal reads totally different when you compare the two, but I'll continue. She gives you all the details of what's happening. Seventh Saturday, weather very dark, smoky, damp, cool. Atmosphere, weather unpleasant. Will, Murph, and Enoch in the clearing. Sent Isaiah to Sharpstown. Bought coffee and tea, paid 87 1/2. Brought my paper on the 4th and 5th. My health is much impaired. My throat continues to be sore and inflamed. Have remained in the office all day. Oh, poor thing. The cat injured the canary bird. Received a note from Doc Parent's lady requesting my carriage to bring his sister, Mrs. Magill, from Hagerstown tomorrow. Ned and Jupe in the boat, a tolerable business. And what you also would notice, or what to pull out of here, is that once you are to a level successful Everybody's going to look to get something from you. And everybody is looking to get something from him. It says, come on, follow, like, rock with me for a second. This is where curiosity gets us to understand what was going on. Like we said, in certain spaces, they would be taking things that later on they found was detrimental to their health. So I'm like, what are brand earth pills? So I'm gonna click this one, brand earth pill factory. This is, I guess this would have been the cover of it. Alcock's porous plasters are the best. Brand earth pills. And it says here, brand earth pill factory from 1863 to 1900. It says that Benjamin Brandoff built the pill factory along the Hudson River in Ossing, then known as Sing Sing. There, his patient medicine products were manufactured and distributed until 1979. Brandoff pills were sold throughout the United States and eventually all over the world. The certificate of agency was meant to guarantee that the products sold at the particular agency were genuine Brandoff products. One of the reasons for Benjamin Brandoff's enormous success was that he was an early, vigorous proponent of advertising. As the All Cats Prosperous Plasters poster suggests, the black and white photograph shows women workers packing pills in Brandoff distinctive tins at the pill factory in 1900. So this is his drug factory here. Trying to see when the world was up in this jammy, why he was taking it like this. Hold on one second. Brand earth pills. Pills purely vegetable. They got the naked dude on the thing. What in the world? All right, hold on one more second. Bear with me. This is to make our story come alive. Understand that it's not just, somebody's boring thing. It's actually, this is what they were doing. And I just want to know, because he took 20 in like a few hours. I'm really trying to find out what that was for health and medicine. Oh, they still got the tins, but they're not telling you what was in it. All right. Let me just try one more thing. Oh, now they try to act like it was a I guess a historic mark. Brandoff Pill Factory demolished without permit. See, we read stuff like this and we're like, well, what's that? The building is on a national register for historic preservation. And they just demolished it. This is 2015. So look at that. We still haven't found what it is. They alluded to it having some kind of vegetable base in it. He complains of his throat, but he's taking these pills. Not exactly sure what was in these pills. One more thing, and then we will go back here. It's a historic location. Distinctive tins. They're just talking about. All right, they're not telling us what's in the dude's pill. They're pills of vegetables. I don't know what was in the pills. And the real power. Okay, maybe it was a what do they call it when it really doesn't work, but you think it works? At the, you guys know what I'm saying right now. It's late for me. But that was interesting with that. Still haven't found out what was in the pills. But anyway, right now Blackford is hocked up on these pills. The real power of imagination. 1834. This is 1834. And right, we're reading, this must have been something new because we're reading, this is 1838 that we're reading. And they're saying that 1834 is when he started selling these pills. He commenced advertising in 1834. Okay, here we go. In the year 1834, Dr. Benjamin Brandurf commenced advertising in the city of New York. Brandurf pills specifically recommended to purify the blood. So he was taking these blood purifiers. That's a lot of stuff. But let me continue. All right, I got a little bit of understanding on what he was doing here. But let's continue. It says 6 Friday, weather smoky and moderate. I am quite indisposed in bed most of the day, ate but little and have taken no pills. Mrs. Eaton's stepson, William Eaton, came in the stage. She met him at the river, brought him up, remained until after dinner when they crossed the river to S Town. Will, Murphy, and Enoch out in the new ground, a number of boats passing up and down the canal. Franklin asked for my mare to ride. Dr. Perrin had some difficulty with the horse and gig near the barn. His wife with him returned after sunset. I wrote Henry in answer to his of the 4th, stating I would send for him the 12th or the 13th. Henry is his son again. Ned and Julian. Who's Julian? In the boat. Sorry. Done but a moderate business, considerable stir about the canal. Boats getting off and on. The 7th, Saturday, weather very dark and cloudy, damp, cold atmosphere, weather unpleasant. Will and Murphy and Enoch in the clearing, sent Isaiah to S Town, bought coffee and tea. So they're eating up these commodities, coffee, which they're not growing here. Tea doesn't say where they're coming from. So there's a lot of trade going on for them to have these things accessible. 87, and of course the sugar, of which they're pimping out throughout the Caribbean, through the sugar trade, where your brothers and sisters were also on slave plantations in the Caribbean. 87 and 1/2 brought my paper on the 4th and 5th. Health is much impaired. Throat continues to be sore, inflamed, have remained in the office all day. No, I read that one already. The cat ate the bird. Okay, let me continue here. 8th, Sunday, weather damp, dark, cloudy, and has rained considerably during the past night and has continued by interviews throughout the day. The family remained at home and within doors all the day. Oh, really? Finally, you stayed at home? Ned has made no return, as little or nothing done. Dude, he says it rained all day. This is what's funny about him. The family stays in, but the slaves should be outside, and he has no return. So what's up with that? 9th, Monday, weather morning, tolerable, clear with some wind. Dr. Perrin's black man called. Wow, that's a new one. His black man. Took the carriage and harness, sat out for Hagerstown for Mrs. McGill. Franklin called, says he is bound for Boonesboro. The little roan mare had a mare colt in the stable last night of a bay color, black man and tail. Huh? The mare had a colt in the stable last night of a bay color, black mane, okay, and tail, hind feet white. The near one about the feet lock, a small star and strip. An old Negro called to return a dollar note paid to him from broom making. He bought up my papers. Catherine and Mary Miller came after dinner. George Cooker called, gave him some old bacon for Michael to make sermon for his horse. Asked him to speak to young Gunther, rough carpenter, to come and work for me. Elizabeth and baby came and spent the evening with the girls. CK in bed sick all day. Wind has risen since morning. The Miss Millers rode home in the evening. Doc Perrin's sister arrived in the carriage, crossover so states. Ned, Derek, and Robinson at Ferry House, drunk. Have been fishing at the mill dam. Ned and Jupe is in the boat. A tolerable business, wind high. You notice in their conversations, as it relates to even today, with the fear of, although he's not going into his personal feelings so much, you don't really see a fear as he's speaking about, quote, black people. You don't see him really fear or having this conversation like he's so afraid. You know, they're interacting, they're doing business, he's hiring them, he's paying them, those who are enslaved. You don't hear fear. The fear, oftentimes, as we saw as things progress, even up until this day, is when the one can no longer control by force or the threat of whatever. And so I just noticed that in this whole conversation, I'm not hearing him speaking, oh, such and such. And so he says the man's Negro or the man's black man. So belonging to this European kind of lessened the fear of, oh, I'm not knowing who this person is. And so, one of the things that oftentimes the Europeans were afraid of was once you are no longer subject to them and you're still occupying the same space. And oftentimes, as we look at the brutality and what's going on in the world, not in the world, in America today, that is what is lending to them. Their control is no longer there. And you're occupying the same space. And they know that they have done many harmful things to individuals, to families, to communities, and to a nation of people that still cohabitate in the same space. And that is fearful. That's like doing something wicked to somebody and you got to live with them. And you're always conscious of the fact that you've done wickedness and afraid of the fact that they will retaliate at any given time. And so when we try to understand this hypersensitivity to, I saw an article the other day, I don't know, it must have been a little bit older, where the young man opened the door for a European woman to go into a bank, I guess ATM space, and the woman called the police because it had the appearance of robbery. And all the man did was open the door, the young college guy. And the police came and threw him on the floor and carried on because, oh, they're making me afraid. Just by opening the door, the thought is, oh, you're going to do something to me. But why are you always afraid that someone is going to do something to you unless you are guilty of having done brutality to others? But in this instance, as he's talking, I don't really hear much fear. 10th Tuesday, weather, morning, windy and cold. Oh, yeah, in person, kid, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see you. It says Tuesday, weather, morning, windy and cold. Franklin wants to cart to haul bacon. And he wondered why he got to take like 50 pills, right? From deep papers. Nicholas working in the garden. Frank brought my torchlight. The little German boy called. Handed Hands account for 2 days of himself. And boy splitting locust posts. Stated $4 when he did this work, which was 2nd September last. He then said expressly that his charge was $2 for 2 days. The river has riven some little. Will, Murph, and Enoch working in new ground. They reported they are hauling off the saw logs. Ned and Jupe in the boat, done but a small business. Wednesday, weather variable. Morning cool with some wind. Doc Paran's man brought over, I guess it's his Negro again, brought over my carriage this morning. Will and Murph in new ground with the wagon. Enoch hauling some manure on the garden with the cart. Nicholas in the garden at work. I rode out to the new ground. Morrison is splitting rails. Went down to JK, and he just just going around and just recording stuff. Like he ain't doing no manual labor. And oftentimes the narrative would be, oh, Negroes are so lazy. But in all this whole narrative, he's not doing any manual labor. He's just reporting about what everybody else is doing. He went down to JK's Martin making shingles, dined there with an Englishman and his wife named Anthony. The wind has increased since morning. Franklin called to say he wanted to go for Henry. The 12th, Thursday, and I'm going to read up to page 40 here. So we got about 2 more pages to go. Thursday, weather clear, morning cold, frost last night. Henry knowed here all night. Franklin sat out for Henry, gave him $85 and a check for $75, which is for Mr. Johns, wrote to J.I. Merrick and letter to Henry. Nicholas in the garden. Henry Node sat off for home after breakfast. William has taken 2 ducks and a drake down to J.K.'s Martin Call, paid him 50 cents. Going to S-Town to purchase tobacco. J. Node has been successful catching fish, sent up 20 by W.M. and Isaiah a boat brought fresh herring. Ned bought a dozen, paid 12 1/2. Will Murphy and Enoch hauling the cordwood off the clearing. They report Morrison cutting Ned and Jupe in the boat, small business. Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th. Yes, person can agree. The Ferry Europeans is waiting for that shoe to drop. It's waiting for the shoe to drop. And we I saw Emmett Till, somebody posted, and nothing has changed. Somebody posted his mother, which I don't know if she was a single mother, but in the thing that I saw, she was by herself. And outside of the black and white, it looked exactly the same. It looked exactly the same as today. And I'll just have to look it up. 1955, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, 25, 2015, 50, 50, what is this? 60, 61 years later, the image is still the same. Her name is Mamie Till. 61 years later, you're still seeing the same image. You're still seeing the same image of the mother crying. It says here she had a spouse. She was married. You're still seeing the same image of the mother crying for the loss of her son and having to come and speak to news media. I was like, wow, nothing much has changed. So when we're like out here thinking that, well, like you said, they're waiting and continuously waiting for that shoe to drop, because you still have to recognize that you're occupying the same space of those who have been on record for hating you. And so when you say, oh, I want to be with you, and the reality is that the person is distrustful of the situation, and has always been, and it is shown in the excessive use of violence and in the need to suppress those who one is afraid of. So Friday the 13th, weather cool, large white frost and ground froze, somewhat hazy. Harris boat passed up this morning laden with chestnut rails. Will Murph and Enoch hauling off cord wood for new ground with wagon of ox. I rode out, measured John and George Wood, make it 45 cord scan. Windows 23 and 1/2 cord, and Nicholas 40 and 1/4 cord. CK and Helena gone on the ponies to Sharpsburg. CK $3 rent for her store, which is the possession and use of Miss Drusilla William and Isaiah. What are you doing? Where are they? No, go back. They're talking to the baby here. Where am I? William and Isaiah went with them to ride the ponies. Home at a boat has arrived with and discharging the Virgin Shore. Franklin and Henry arrived about sunset from Murchesburg, came by the way of Williams, WN. Came with them from Sharpsburg. Ned and Jupe in the boat have done a tolerable business. 14th Saturday, weather clear, some little wind. So you look at these places now, they're like, oh, we open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This ain't nothing new. If you money grubbing and you gonna want money every minute of the day without regard to those who work for you, I'm still baffled at when did these people rest? Because he's just going straight through the days, and he's always expecting once in a while you see him busting a church on a Sunday, not advocating that he go to church, but this is already past. But you're really not seeing any rest. And when somebody is sick, he says stuff like claims they're sick. Like you are working them straight for a year, and then when they're sick, you say claim they're sick. But when you're sick, you say I've been in the office. Again, we're looking at the psychology of this whole conversation. You're to a level, melanated people in their eyes to a level are inhumane, are not human. So therefore, you don't need, or you don't feel, or you don't experience as I do, the oppressor. Not me, the oppressor, but that, Anyway, 14th Saturday, weather clear, some little wind. Martin Shellman and Nicholas both called. Both are from the spray. Gave Nicholas $2.75 and Martin $1, which will keep them drunk for some time. Now, he keeps complaining about people being drunk, but then he makes a little sly remark that he gave them some money and this will keep them drunk for some time. Settled Henry's school expense. Find the session has cost $100. Franklin says he dealt my letter to Mr. Merrick. His expenses to Merchantsburg and back $3.62 and a half. He traded off his sorrow horse for a brown to a drover, gave $35 in boot. Henry rode to Sharpsburg. Corbin's daughter Abigail came this afternoon. Jackson, her brother, brought her to the river. Henry returned from Sharpsburg. CK and Helena remained there, a 3-day meeting in Hoffmeyer's congregation. Hargrave and Douglas assisting him. The canal appeared to be in full use at the present to Williamsport. The weather continues cold, windy, rough, unpleasant. Ned and Jupe in the boat and have done but a middling business this week. Dull times, bad currency, nothing but shin plasters, whatever shin plasters are. Y'all know I have a crazy imagination. What, for some reason, it doesn't look like they had like I said yesterday, a uniform currency. Shin plaster, a piece of paper currency or a promissory note regarding as having little or no value. So this is historical US, New Zealand, Australian, shin plaster. So he's saying nothing but, I guess, IOUs means a banknote of low denomination that has generally depreciated in value. Generally, shin plaster. We learning now. We learning now. He's saying, let me go look this up real quick. Shin plaster means a banknote of low denomination that has generally or greatly depreciated in value. That's like something we know soon. Generally, a shin plaster denomination is less than $1. Earlier, these banknotes were issued by banks, merchants, wealthy individuals, and associates in various places. An example of shin plaster is the paper money of the Republic of Texas in relation to the US dollar. In addition, shin plaster was commonly a Canadian slang for 25-cent note. Wow, how you got a 25-cent note? It is from the quality of the paper that the name shin plaster came. Usually, the paper used for making shin plaster was so cheap that with a bit of starch, it could be used to make paper mache like plasters to go under socks and warm shins. So that's what a shin plaster was from uslegal.com. Thank you for that, US Legal. 15th, Sunday, weather this morning, cloudy, cold, wind and snow at 10 o'clock. Henry rode my mare and led the bald pony to Sharpsburg for his sister to ride home. It has continued to snow from 10 until 4 in the evening with but little intermission, snow 3 or 4 inches deep. Corbin's son Jackson came a little after it commenced to snow. Him and his sister Abigail remained shut up with us in the house all day. Henry returned from Sharpsburg after 9 o'clock. We had retired to bed. He states that he came from JK's with Catherine, JK's wife, where he spent the evening. CK and Helena remains in Sharpsburg. Ned made no return as there was nothing done. 16th, Monday. Weather cloudy, the whole face of the country covered with snow, and the trees loaded with snow has all appearance of winter except the blossoms of the peach tree is peeping through the snow and hangs to the limb. JK, oh look, he gave a little bit of a, this is the first time he's actually given a description, like, whoa, look at that. JK calls, says he has engaged 4 tons plaster from Jacob Reynolds. He is attended to getting it brought over. Franklin gone to Sharpsburg. The snow is disappearing very slowly. He used a lot of what was on his land. Again, like he keeps talking about people wanting to come and get stone, plaster. He's like taking this stuff from his land and actually selling it out. So it says the lime plaster was to be used to fertilize on hay and grain crops. And Hoffermeyer was a German, Hargrave a Presbyterian, and Douglas a Presbyterian. Evidently, this was an interdenominational rival meeting with the people. So the last page I'm going to read for today, we're going to stop at page 40, is page 39. It says here, there fell a similar snow on the 23rd of April last, rather more, it being 5 inches deep. Corbin's son and daughter Abigail here, Franklin's boat. So he's keeping his own little personal farmer's almanac here. Boat has gone up to the Harris's landing to take in wood. Henry Jackson and William moving about the hands. Will Murph and Enoch doing very little, have pretended to clean out. Listen to what he said. It's funny. He's real slight. He's real slight with his. He says, Henry and William moving about the hands. Will Murph and Enoch doing very little, have pretended to clean out the stable. So they're pretending. And Murph drunk as usual. Beat little John down at the Ferry house, Ned and Jupe in the boat. What does that mean? He beat little John down at the Ferry house. CK and Helena in Sharpsburg, but little doing anyhow and anyway, bad weather. So they're not supposed to be tired. Listen to the conversation. They're pretending to clean out the stables. We have been reading 30 plus pages of conversation. These people have never had a time off. And when they are, quote, skylarking on the job, you got the nerve to be writing that they're pretending to clean out the stables and one of your indentured or slave persons is always drunk. So Murph is drunk as usual. Murph. So we look at some of the things that have come down the line in how, quote unquote, Black people have learned to self-medicate from, either smoking and drinking. This has been because of the condition, the workload. They're looking for some kind of release. And he actually fostered that. Oh, I'm going to give you a little something. You're going to get drunk as usual. And then on the other end, say that complaint. So it's no wonder that they know what to put in the hood. You understand? Being that you were already feeding this type of behavior from before this time. So they know, put a liquor store and a corner store to provide them what they need, because they're going to need to self-medicate. And this is why liquor store doesn't go out of business, because of the poverty oftentimes and the conditions. No one in their right mind could oftentimes deal with it on an ongoing basis. And he's speaking to this situation right now about Murph being drunk, quote, as usual. 17th, Tuesday, weather cloudy and windy, cold and unpleasant. Henry led a horse to Sharpsburg for his sister to ride home. He set out to go to course, took my boots and shoes to have repaired. Abigail went down to Franklin's. Henry and Helena returned home in the evening. Will, Murph, and Enoch hauling off wood from the clearing, progressing very slow. Abigail came up in the evening. Shorts boat off. J.K. calls, says he has engaged and is to be ready tomorrow. 4-ton plaster from Jacob Reynolds at $9.75 per ton. Like, what was he using to measure a ton? That's interesting. Like a ton, 1,000 pounds. Like, what was your weight and measurement for that? Had my old bags mended. The snow has nearly all disappeared. Ned and Julius in the boat. A very poor business. Give me 1 second. Just 1 second. I'll be right back. All right. So we just have a little bit more to go here. The 18th of Wednesday, weather cloudy, smoky, heavy is more moderate. I don't know what he means by smoky. Like I said, I'm gonna venture to say it was foggy, because unless somebody doing a barbecue, I don't know what's smoking. Franklin's boat sat out this morning. Nicholas came for 1 bushel of corn, directed him to come tomorrow and help the wood stage across. 1/2, 10 o'clock, 3 passengers. The hands hauling off wood. Commenced raining in the afternoon, which drove the hands in. Then they went to Trussing Rye. Franklin returned. He went with the boat as far as Harper's Ferry. It cleared off about sunset, a beautiful rainbow. Oh, look, a piece of humanity. He comments on the peach tree and the beautiful rainbow. JK did not go for this plaster in consequence of the rain. I bled the bald pony. Shulman swanking about not doing. Here he goes again with the language. Swanking, pretending, claiming. So when we look at saying that, oh, this narrative, this stereotype, this propaganda, look where it's coming from. Now, these are the words he's using. Now he's swanking about not doing anything. But when he feels sick, he can stay in his office. But, when you don't feel like being pushed around for no wages, now you swanking and not doing anything. I spent the day in the house, unpleasant weather to be out. Now he gets to spend the day in the house, but somebody else, Showman, he's a swanker. Corbin's daughter Abigail here. Ned and Julius in the boat, light business. Enoch brought a bag of cornmeal from the mill. I received my Baltimore Patriot, of which you get to swank around and read, right? You swanking. That's my new word now. All right. Swanking. 19th, Thursday, weather cloudy, cold, windy, unpleasant. Nicholas came is working him, and Will is in the clearing. Murph until breakfast. He then went over to Reynolds' mill for plaster. Henry and Helena rode to Sharpsburg. Franklin came up and bled his brown horse. Like, this is what they would do, but they would think they was helping the thing. But anyway, J.K. Node bought a ton plaster from Reynolds, which is for use of the lower farm. He is to pay for the 1/2. Henry and Helena returned from Sharpsburg. Helena took up goods on credit to the amount of $23.53. The river has risen quite rapidly and to a considerable height. Murph brought over from George Reynolds' mill 3-ton plaster at 2 trips. So 3,000 pounds. A bill sent, but no price affixed. The understanding with JK was at the price W short sold, which is $9.75 per ton, net and juke in the boat, poor business. So we're up to page 40. We shall pick up again, and like I said, I'm gonna try to be consistent throughout this week. Tomorrow, I may have something to do at this particular time, so I may be coming on a little bit earlier to see if we could bust out some more pages, so that hopefully by the end of the week, let me see, we're up to page 40. By the end of the week, it might be a little bit longer than the end of the week, but we could definitely continue to make our little way through this narrative, because again, when you're going through history, this may seem like a little bit, but people hang on to just a shred of information to give them inside roads onto what was going on. So this is definitely a lot of information, and we're going to pick up the pace as we make our way through and just really look at the psychology, and also, like I said, among that, the business aspect of his particular slaving venture here. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is Amuna Yisrael, Solonomics 101. And I pray everybody have a blessed night. And I'll talk to you soon. So if I come on tomorrow, it's either going to be in the afternoon, or it's going to be like around the 7 o'clock hour thereabouts. So definitely just check and see. And once again, thank you for your support, and continue to be the change that you desire to see in the world. One.